Start the recording. There we go. I'll start again. My name is Mericka McCabe. I'm a scientific engagement manager at protocols.io, and today I'll be presenting our Getting Credit webinar. We'll talk about how to publish your methods on protocols.io and how in doing so you'll have citable and discoverable methods that enable you to get credit and recognition for your work. Some quick housekeeping. We'll be recording the webinar today. You'll receive a link to the recording and these slides. So if you need to come back and watch anything or check the slides, you can do so. You can also enable closed captioning and turn on translations, which I'll go over in the next slide. We'll have a Q&A session at the end, and please add your questions in the Q&A or chat during the webinar. I'm here today. This is my first webinar as part of my role as a scientific engagement manager with protocols.io, and I'm joined by my coworker, Lenny Tiedelman, one of the founders of protocols.io, who will also help in answering those questions if needed as you put them in the Q&A and chat. Additionally, we have a feedback survey at the end. This will be an opportunity for you to give your feedback. And as I said, this is my first webinar, so I highly encourage your feedback. And you can also suggest any topics for future webinars. And I invite you to check out our other webinars at protocols.io/webinars or request a one-on-one demo at protocols.io/help/demo. And you can meet with either myself or one of my colleagues, and we can answer any questions you may have in a more intimate format. So as I mentioned, if you need to enable captions, you can click the Show Captions. Let me turn the laser pointer on. You can click Show Captions at the bottom of your screen. If you click this, you'll then be prompted to translate the captions into any language that you need, Spanish, a huge list of other languages. Today, we're going to really be focusing on protocols.io, but I want to start with a quick overview of the methods community and the methods renaissance that we're going through at the moment. I'll talk about how to share your protocols publicly on protocols.io, how to publish peer-reviewed protocols, how to link them to papers and peer review, and then we'll save a lot of time for Q&A so I can answer any questions you may have. So if we go back a bit in history, methods have really only become a focus recently, even though they're used every day in the lab or by researchers. In 2004, the journal Nature Methods was started, and there was a lot of skepticism, even in the Nature publishing group, around the launch of Nature Methods. People at Nature thought that there was research being published in Nature, and the founding editor-in-chief was told that no one was going to read Methods and it would dilute the brand. But as we all know, Nature Methods was and is a huge success. And the skepticism or dismissiveness of methods actually seems a bit irrational. In 2014, the journal Nature compiled a list of the most highly cited papers, and last year published an updated list based on data provided by Clarivate, which owns the Web of Science and is a database that includes 98 million papers dating back to 1900. You might also recognize Clarivate because they are who assigns impact factors to journals. In both 2014 and 2025, when this was updated, the top three of the top 10 cited papers were research laboratory techniques. This has remained unchanged, and these have over 200,000 citations. The other top papers also tend to be dominated by laboratory techniques. So that's over the last 100 years, but in the last decade or so, if we look more recently, there's been a surge in ways to publish and share those protocols and methods. This slide shows a few examples, but it's not an exhaustive list, and big publishers like Springer Nature are expanding their portfolio of method-centered journals with journals like Nature Protocols, which was launched 2 years after Nature Methods, BMC Methods, and their acquisition of protocols.io, where we're now part of the Springer Nature family. Other major publishing groups are also leaning into this opportunity to share methods. You have STAR Protocols and Methods X through Elsevier, and independent initiatives like Jove or BioProtocol. So we're now in this place where funders, journals, and researchers are realizing that it's not just code and data that we should be sharing. Some of you might know that in the late 90s, we moved away from please contact authors for code and data to using data and code repositories like GitHub, Dryad, Figshare, and the Open Science Framework. And although the methods community has to kind of play catch up, sharing methods is starting to become the norm. And you're starting to have more choices on where and how to communicate those methods, including with us at protocols.io. The shift in how people are valuing methods is also being mirrored in the open science movement. Historically, the open science movement focused on open access publications, open and fair data code, but we've started to realize that data sharing needs method sharing. Methods are necessary to contextualize how data and results were acquired, and in order to accurately interpret those data and results. And we're beginning to see policy recommendations for method sharing, such as the ProMap, Promoting Reusable and Open Methods Protocols from the European Commission, and UNESCO's recent recommendations on open science. I'll also highlight, some of you may know, this week is Love Data Week, and 2 weeks ago, we participated in Love Methods Week. Love Methods Week highlights why methods are important and the fact that they're a really valuable output of research. I'll just pop in the chat later and in these slides. For those of you who didn't join us, we had a really lovely panel about method myth busting with editors from top methods journals, where we walked through the importance of methods publishing and some of the myths surrounding it. So this brings me from the history of method sharing to protocols.io, which was launched in 2014 with the goal to enhance method sharing among researchers. Protocols.io mission is to make it easy to share method details before, during, and after publication. And for those of you who aren't familiar, there's two sides of protocols.io. It's an open access method sharing repository that has free to read and free to publish protocols and over 25,000 public protocols at the moment. All of these protocols are published with a CC BY, which means that they can be distributed or built upon as long as the original author is credited. We also have a private collaboration tool with over 86,000 private protocols, which allows researchers to securely create, share, and optimize protocols within their team or organization. Protocols.io is built for modern science. When you share and use protocols.io, it's not static like Word or PDF. It's dynamic and adaptable and interactive. You can run protocols from your cell phone or computer. You can upload images and videos. You can visualize and track how others reuse your work, such as through copying, forking, or making versions of your previous protocols. You can also comment and discuss and view public comments and discussions between researchers and the authors of protocols. For example, here, Dr. Henkenoff, who's responding to this researcher who's trying to optimize the cut and run protocol. And with protocols.io, you can submit for peer review and get a DOI for your protocol publication, allowing you to share your method in a citable way, just as someone would cite your manuscript. I'll go through some of the publishing options on protocols.io now, and you can also view our help site and if you want to read more. The platform is really flexible, and there's several ways to go about it. The two main ways that researchers publish their methods with us is through either standalone methods or by linking protocols to research papers. The researchers that publish standalone methods, those are still citable and available to be used by others, but aren't necessarily linked to that author's own manuscript. And those who link protocols to research papers have detailed methods that support the findings in their manuscript that's published. And today I'll be focusing more on that and on journal partnerships. For those of you who have used the site, this may look familiar to you, but when you're looking at a protocol that you own, you have many options to publish, lock, or share your protocol. And we want to allow you to be transparent throughout the process. One option is to publish, which will make your protocol available to the public with a DOI. You'll need to go through a quick workflow, including adding in an abstract, any authors or funding information. So don't worry that you'll accidentally publish your protocol at any point because you'll have to walk through that first. There's a similar workflow if you reserve a DOI, but this allows you to generate a DOI that you can cite in your manuscript without having that protocol become public immediately. It will also generate a private link so that you can share the protocol with editors and reviewers and view it and allow them to view it before it's published. I'll note here also that, if you reserve a DOI, the protocol will remain private. If we find that DOI in a public manuscript because you forgot to make it public at the time of manuscript publication, then that protocol will become published and publicly available. You can also post a draft, which allows you to put a preliminary version of your protocol publicly available without a DOI. You can sign your protocol, which will make the protocol uneditable without making it public. And I'll note that this is limited to accounts with premium institutional licenses. And you can go through the peer-reviewed options by clicking a drop-down here to discover how you can include your protocol in an article to submit for peer review. So I want to talk quickly about directly citing DOIs in papers when you're referencing protocols from protocols.io. Some of you might be familiar with the idea of modular publishing, which is publishing discrete research outputs and bringing them all together into a manuscript. So in this example here from a Nature Communications paper, you can see in the data availability section, there's these 3 research outputs: expression constructs that are put to AdGene, protocols that were deposited at protocols.io, and a molecular structure that was published in the protein data bank. And the people responsible for each of these outputs are able to get the appropriate credit. So in this case, with the paper, we have Kelsey Ramirez, who's a 4th author, but in the protocol, she was one of the primary protocol developers and is listed as the 1st author for that research output, and is now able to get that credit deserved for this protocol creation. Another important difference between papers and protocols is that the method transparency differs across the publishing models. For a paper, often these are subscription based and people might not be able to access the methods if they don't have access to the paper. But if you deposit that protocol into protocols.io, people are able to view the protocol as it's open access. And as I mentioned before, we have multiple journal partnerships, which started in 2021 with PLOS ONE and has been expanding over time. These journals welcome submission for peer review, and the key is that you have whether you have a research paper associated with the protocol that's suitable for publication into one of these journals or not. If you do have an associated research paper, it depends on the guidelines of all of these journals, what one may be best to submit to, but many are really happy to publish interesting and new methods, even if there's not necessarily groundbreaking data associated with it. So I encourage you to go to the sites of all of these journals and read about what their author guidelines include. And just to mention, we've had a nice example of a lot of authors publishing with us. And here's 3 authors as an example who all have peer-reviewed methods on protocols.io. One author said that she's from a small Latin American country, and by publishing her protocol, she was able to become famous within her country. Others commented that this was their first author paper or their first time publishing as a senior author, and in addition to having that paper, they were able to publish that protocol. And I mentioned that they all have this peer-reviewed method badge, and those badges are put onto protocols that are associated with manuscripts from some of our partner journals. One of those, as I mentioned, is PLOS ONE. PLOS ONE lab protocols requires that there's concurrent publishing between the manuscript and the protocol on protocols.io. You'll find the protocol in the materials and methods section, and it's also linked with the See the Protocol button. And when you go to protocols.io, that protocol will have the peer-reviewed method checkmark, and it also will have a link back to the paper. BMC Methods is another of our partner journals, which invites companion articles to contextualize protocols. And once again, you'll have the DOI of the protocol cited in materials and methods. And then when you view the protocol, it will link to the original manuscript and also mark the protocol as a peer-reviewed method if the editor confirms that it was peer-reviewed. And one of our more recent partnerships is with Nature Cell Biology, which requires protocols for technical reports and encourages protocols for other article types. And as you can see here, once again, the protocol is cited with the DOI link. And when we view the protocol, it's linked back to the manuscript and it gets that peer-reviewed method badge because the editors and reviewers confirmed that this protocol was peer-reviewed as part of the manuscript's peer review process. I previously mentioned this year's Love Methods Week. Last year we also hosted a really wonderful Love Methods panel that was Ask the Experts, journal editors, and published authors about peer reviewing your protocols. So if you want to learn more about the process of peer reviewing protocols with some of these editors that are connected to protocols.io, I encourage you to watch the recording by either scanning the QR code now and saving it for later, or when you receive these slides later, you can click the link. And I'll just walk us through a quick case study. I previously showed this example of this PLOS1 protocol, which I mentioned is linked both through the PLOS1 article, and then when you come to the protocol, you can link back to the PLOS1 manuscript itself. But what's really fun and interesting about using protocols.io is that you're able to have an evolution of your method, and it's transparent, it's trackable throughout the entire research process. So in 2020, the protocol was originally published on protocols.io. In April of 2021, version 2 of this protocol was published. The author made some changes, improved the protocol, and then connected this to the peer-reviewed article that was published in PLOS One on May of 2021. Over a year after that article was published, the author made additional changes to the protocol to further improve it and was able to publish version 3 on protocols.io. And now anyone who goes and views the PLOS One article and is linked to the protocol on protocols.io will be informed that there's a new version that they can view and see what changes were made and have that new and improved protocol without the author having to go and publish another manuscript and another manuscript. And in the future, that protocol can be updated or built upon at any time. The author talked about the fact that the visibility for an early career researcher was really important, claiming another really good thing that I think this protocol has done for my career is the recognition it gave me. I was lucky enough to have been invited to lectures and practical sessions at various universities. So you're able to get recognition by publishing, and this is really easy to see in the metrics tab on protocols.io, where you can view how often someone has viewed your protocol, if people have bookmarked it, if they've made forks, which means they've made their own versions and built upon your protocol. And you'll see for this example, there's 127,000 views across the protocol, while the paper that it is linked to only had 37,000. So in some cases, protocols get more access and better metrics than the paper itself because they're more used day to day by scientists. And as I mentioned, there's visibility across different disciplines. So this same author said that although the PhD was specific to a time period in a region, he was able to add this methodological aspect that went past those boundaries. And there's a really good example of this in practice where this paper that used RNA extraction in 3 spine stickleback parasites was published. Someone tweeted saying they were looking for someone with experience doing RNA extraction from primary cortical neuron cultures, which is a completely different model organism. And someone linked them to the RNA extraction protocol from that paper. Even though it's a different model and model organism, they're now able to build off of that for their own research. And by sharing your methods on protocols.io, you can connect with other researchers. This professor mentioned that 80% of his recent collaborations were a result of publishing directly on protocols.io. So there's a lot of visibility that comes from sharing on protocols.io because people find these protocols either with the research paper or independently from the research paper. And so publishing on this platform is another avenue for people to understand and connect with your research. So I've gone through really quickly the background of protocols.io and why methods are important. I'll take some time now to go through a live demo of how you can start making a protocol to publish and how you would publish that on protocols.io. And then we'll just do a quick wrap up and leave a lot of time for questions. So if we come into protocols.io, give me one second. If we come into protocols.io, you can see in my demo workspace, I have multiple protocols here. I just want to highlight for those of you who aren't familiar with the website, this color coding where I have in orange a private protocol. That's one that only I have example access to, or that someone I've given access to can access. There's also published protocols, which will appear in blue, and protocols with reserved DOI, which will appear in purple. If you have a protocol that you've already developed and you're ready to share, but it's formatted as a Word doc or a PDF, you're not limited with protocols.io. You can put that protocol in the site, click it in the file manager, and then click create a new protocol from this file. And our AI protocolify importer will allow you to convert that into a step-by-step format. That will appear as I show here with this different step-by-step format, and you'll need to take the time to just quickly review and see if there's any changes that need to be made. For example, it clustered my secondary antibody steps with my primary antibody steps as substeps, so I would want to come in here, select those steps, and convert them to their own steps. Once I've gone through and made these conversions, I can also add in any components, for example, adding in the temperature component so that this shows us 4 degrees, adding in a timer component, duration component so that I'll have a timer. And eventually I can end up with a beautiful step-by-step protocol that includes all of these components, safety information. I added in some pictures, notes, and I'll note also this protocol was originally developed for use in the lab where I have passwords and usernames, which is great if it's private and I am the only one accessing it, but for publication, I am able to remove those and just say image and not provide the microscope information. Then when you view the protocol, you'll be able to view the publication workflow, and I can go through and click publish and go through my workflow. And as I mentioned before, you won't be able to accidentally publish something. You'll need to provide an abstract. You'll be stopped if you haven't. So there's no concerns about accidentally publishing. I'll discard those changes. And when you've published your protocol, you'll end up with a DOI. The protocol will now be publicly available. And when it's time to cite the protocol in your paper, you can go to the metadata tab and download the protocol citation, which can then be imported into a bibliography manager, such as EndNote. You can also copy and paste the citation from the site if you'd like to. So that's all I want to show for the live demo, and we'll now go back into our slides quickly. There we go. One question we're asked a lot is, what if I've published a paper over the last few years and I have methods associated, but I never had heard of protocols.io before? Can I still put it onto protocols.io? And the answer is absolutely. People publish standalone protocols on the platform all the time. It does not have to be linked to a manuscript, but it can also be published after the manuscript is published. You'll go to the description tab and add manuscript citation. And then whenever someone views your protocol, in addition to seeing the download protocol citation and the protocol citation that I showed in the live demo, they'll also get this alert saying, please remember to cite the following publication. And if they're referencing your work, they'll cite both your protocol and your publication. Other people ask a lot also, what if I want to share a protocol based on someone else's work? Our view is that it's okay to put this on the platform, but as with any research output, you need to ensure that you're giving citation and proper credit. This is an example of what someone's done. They have the original protocol and they say that it's adapted from this protocol and highlight all of their references. And when you're making a protocol in protocols.io, there is a references tab that you can add to. So even if you're creating a brand new protocol, if you're building off of the work of others, you can add those in. People can also later claim authorship of a protocol if they see that something that they've published has been put onto the site. And we always encourage you to reach out to the authors. So if you want to put someone else's protocol onto protocols.io, take a minute to send them an email and see if they'd be okay with that. And perhaps they want to learn about protocols.io and put it on the site themselves. And just to quickly highlight that Protocols.io is being encouraged by a lot of organizations as people are becoming more and more aware of method sharing. They're realizing that we need these repositories and that Protocols.io can serve as one. So I talked about some of our journals and publishers that are partners with us, but over 500 journals recommend Protocols.io during manuscript submission. There are many funders that require or recommend Protocols.io in their grant guidelines and policies. And there's a lot of institutions that have campus licenses to allow for reproducible research and publications. So as I said, I can only cover so much today, and I really want to leave a lot of time for anyone to ask questions. So there's a lot of useful places on our website that you can go to if you need any help. We have our help center that you can explore various topics. We have short tutorials on different topics. You can submit feedback or ask questions anytime you're using the platform. We also have webinars across different time zones, getting credit, the one you're in today being one of them, but an introduction to protocols.io and a tips and techniques one that goes through more details about components, about creating and sharing protocols. And some of those are available as recordings as well on our site. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning, you can request a personal demo one-on-one with one of us if you have really specific questions or you want to meet individually in a Zoom meeting rather than a Zoom webinar. And you're welcome to email info@protocols.io to arrange a dedicated webinar as well. And so I'll stop now sharing my screen and take time to answer any questions you have. If you think of anything after the webinar is over, you're welcome to email me at mericka.mccabe@protocols.io or email our info@protocols.io email. You can scan the QR code now if you would like to provide some feedback. I'll also put this link in the chat. Let me stop sharing. Great. Are there any questions? I see none. I'll give people a few more minutes if you want to put any questions into the chat. And again, you're welcome to send an email. Perhaps, Lenny, we can stop recording so that if people want to ask a question without fear of it being recorded, they feel welcome to do so. I can do that myself.